One night I was enjoying a small bit of ice cream after my 4-year-old daughter went to bed. She came downstairs and caught me. So I offered her a small bite, but since she was supposed to be in bed, I said, "Don't tell Mom." She assured me she wouldn't. My wife wouldn't have cared anyway, but it was a fun little game to play. After she went up to bed and I was down on the couch, she sneaked into the master bedroom where Mom was resting. She told Mom that I had let her have some ice cream, and she was afraid of sugar bugs, so could she please brush her teeth again. My wife just laughed at me the next day. Little shit ratted me out to brush her teeth, something she doesn't like doing anyway.
When Elle was 12 or so, I walked into my dad's office to find him counting money. He says, "Don't tell Mom and you'll find out what it's for." So I don't say a thing. 2 days later he wakes me up early to run errands with him. We came back with a new, used, but new for us, car. He also said if I don't tell how much he spent on it he'll let me drive it. It was only a couple $100, but we were broke and she would have been mad. My mother tried so hard to find out, but I kept the secret. So anytime we were in an open space like an empty lot he would let me drive it. I felt like the coolest kid in middle school knowing how to drive a car. Again, don't tell your mother, he says. It was our secret thing and I'll cherish those memories forever. When I got my permit at 16 I was so excited to drive it for real. I ask my mother if I can drive her around when she has to go out, but she says absolutely not since I have no experience. Well, I can't argue because I don't wanna get Dad in trouble. This goes on for a few weeks. I keep asking, she keeps telling me no. This finally happened one day while Dad was home and overheard. He comes in the room, gives me a nod and says to my mother, "She's a better driver than you anyway," tosses me the keys and tells Mom everything. I was so stoked and cheering. I can drive. I can drive. Dad says, "Drive it?" No. If you can keep a secret for that long you can keep the car too. 20 years later it's still one of my favorite memories.
Female coworker of mine was miserable at work one day. I asked her what was wrong. She told me it was her anniversary, and she knew her husband had forgotten. She had pre-teen girls at home during summer vacation. I knew her home phone number, pre-cell phone era. I called her home phone and one kid picked up. Explained to the kid who I was and that she needed to call Dad at work and remind him it was Mom and Dad's anniversary. And don't tell Mom or Dad I called. The next day she was all smiles. Gosh, he did remember, brought home flowers and took her to dinner. Mission accomplished. Not a word was ever said about this. Until 6 years later, when she left the company. She gave me a hug at a farewell luncheon, and whispered, "My kids ratted you out. Thank you."
My dad and I, around 5 years old, were on our way home from a car show when we were getting followed by the cops. My dad struggled to put on his seatbelt quickly in hopes he wouldn't get a ticket. Unfortunately, we got pulled over. This might have been the first time ever that I saw a cop this close up, let alone speak to one. I was a deer in headlights the whole time. Well, with a cop on either side of the car, the officer leaned in and asked my dad why he was swerving. That dick told the cops I was tickling him. The cops looked at me straight in the eyes and asked if this was true. I was too scared to say anything and just nodded yes. The officers smiled and said, "Never to do that again while your father is driving, okay?" They left without any further words and my dad gave me the lecture of, "Don't tell your mom."
Not a father but a son. We forgot my passport during vacation and were already at the border station when we noticed. My dad then said that we won't turn back but that he will figure something out. Turns out he smuggled me successfully across 3 border crossings without my passport. Before we arrived at home, he told me not to tell my mom about this.
I have always worked in restaurants and get home late nights. On Fridays I treat myself to takeout. Not just any takeout, the bad stuff. Cheese fries topped with gyro meat, steak nachos with guac. Always a large, always with a big bottle of beer they sell singly. When my girls were little they would sneak down late at night and we would munch bad food and watch really bad funny movies with all the swear words in.
I was in middle school. My father gradually bought computers and monitors for us 4 kids and himself, and the 5 of us would play World of Warcraft together for many days and always log off 1 hour before Mom got home. We'd rush all the chores in that 1 hour. That's when we had teamwork at its finest. She never knew we all played cause she thought it was the devil.
In the winter, he would put the toboggan behind the 4-wheeler and take us out into the fields and ride around. My mom found out after it tipped and my face got beat up and was bleeding everywhere. Fun.
Not exactly, because we were caught in the act, but here we go. When I was 10 years old I was in a head-on car crash with my dad and my little brother. My dad ended up with 2 shattered feet and he was in a wheelchair after getting out of hospital. Now my dad did stereotypical dad things around the house before this happened, and being stuck in a wheelchair was difficult for him. One day while my mum was out, it was just the two of us in the house. Suddenly I'm being called by my dad to go grab the lawnmower and the trimmer. My dad had decided to cut the grass while in his wheelchair. So 10-year-old me does as she's told and grabs what needs to be grabbed and plus everything in as told. I move what needs to be moved into the garden, but there's one problem: Dad can't get into the garden in his chair. The entrance is just too narrow. So my father, being the reckless and mischievous man that he is, comes up with a plan. He's going to lift himself up using the garden wall. I'm to collapse the chair and move it through and then reopen it so he can sit down. The pressure is on. Little 10-year-old me is ready to go. He gets himself up and we manage it in one try. After that, cutting the grass together was fairly simple, but by this point we'd attracted the attention of the neighbors. My neighbor from across the road was frantic when she saw what we were doing. Husbands from other households were joking my dad was making them look bad. Then, the jig was up. Mum was home. I didn't get into trouble exactly, but Mum never let us live down.
I'll speak for my dad here. He had just gotten a really shitty motorcycle while we were visiting his parents at their farm in a semi-desert area. Note, he's never ridden a motorcycle before, and his youngest brother died in a motorcycle accident. I remember coming outside in the late afternoon and I saw my dad absolutely covered in scrapes, cuts, and bruises all over his body, but mostly on his legs that had been bare. I freaked out and he assured me he was fine and explained that he had fallen down a mountain nearby while on this motorcycle. I don't remember if the bike was salvageable, but I do remember him turning to me, putting on a very serious face, and saying, "Absolutely do not tell your grandmother about this." Even at like 50, he was that scared of his mother. Bonus story: I was at the beach with my dad since I was staying with him for the weekend. Divorced parents. We went swimming in the ocean near this rock formation that jutted out of the sea no more than 100 meters of the shoreline. We went in when it was high tide turning into low tide, and we got swept out by a riptide that formed around the rock. My dad told me he was too tired and old to swim out and was just going to let the current take him and hope it would spit him out. I, a young, strong swimmer, started swimming parallel to the shore for a good 15 to 20 minutes straight. According to my dad, felt like hours to me. I got out and started screaming for help and saying that my dad was still stuck in the ocean. No one could see him and I was so scared he had drowned. Then someone said, "Is that him over there?" and pointed about 200 meters down the beach. Sure enough, there was my dad walking towards us in his Lumo green swim trunks. I ran to him and we met in the middle and fiercely hugged because we had both thought we had lost the other forever. As we were packing up to leave shortly after, I looked at him and asked, "I don't have to tell Mama about this, do I?" And he snorted in a "oh dear God no" manner and said, "Please do not tell your mother about this. Considering I've almost drowned 3 times under and broke my collarbone under my father's care, I can understand his desire to keep this under wraps too."
When I was younger, my dad and I would always go to the movies together. It was our thing. I always looked forward to it. Also, when I was about 11, we would often watch Family Guy or South Park together, certainly not age appropriate, but nothing too terrible, I don't think. However, one day he took me to see Team America, World Police when it came out, made by the guys who did South Park. I think he realized his mistake during the puppet sex scene, and immediately after said, "Don't tell your mom about this." Rip Dad, love and miss you.
Dad was putting new roof shingles on. I was probably 3, maybe 4. I asked if I could help. He said if I could climb the ladder, sure. I was always climbing, so that was no issue. Climbed right on up and started handing him shingles. It would have been a "don't tell your mother" moment had she not come home from grocery shopping. After several back and forth of "where are you" and "up here Mom," she figured it out and flipped out. "What is he doing on the roof?"
I was having a good heart-to-heart with my stepdad as a teen. We were chilling in the shop where he does most of his odd job work, and by the end of our conversation he pulls out his bong and asks, "Wanna keep going? But don't tell your mom, she will throw my ass through a window." Ironically enough, the way they met was at a bar and my stepdad was hitting on her and she said she could throw him across the bar. He dared her, so she did. He told me that was the moment he knew he would fall in love with her.
Dad scratched the car after an idiot turned and rammed into us. He told me to just keep it a secret and he slid me a few singles to keep my mouth shut. But she found out anyway.
When my 3-year-old wakes up in the middle of the night, like maybe 3 times a month, instead of putting her back to sleep, she stay up and partake in whatever it is I am doing no matter what. Sometimes she falls asleep in minutes and sometimes she stays up for a couple hours. I think it's amazing times. I think it may even be dream-like for her by the way she speaks and moves. She has painted with me, heard my books read aloud, watched Lord of the Rings and cooked creme brulee. The rule is, it's my time, so if she's gonna be with me she does what I'm doing just like I do for her all day long. She totally gets it and never makes it about her.
It was my weekend with my 15-year-old son. We had divorced when he was 10. We were at a pool party barbecue at my friend's condo complex and I had brought a couple sodas for him. The dude cooking the chicken overcooked it and was dry, and another friend had pilfered one of the Dr. Peppers, so my son needed something to drink. I suggested he go back to the condo and find something in the fridge. Then he pointed at the plastic pitcher with about a glass left of margarita. I said, okay, but don't tell your mom. I figured he would just take a mouthful to wash down the food, but nope, he pounded the whole thing. I was like, okay, well there wasn't that much in there, so no biggie. I said, damn dude, didn't think you were gonna chug the whole thing. He was like, what, is there alcohol in it? I was like, yeah duh, it's a margarita. He said, but you guys used to make us kids margaritas when you had people over the house. I said, yeah, virgin ones with just ice and the mixer in the blender, not the adult version with tequila in it. Well, next thing you know he's super chatty, actually talking to all my friends like a normal outgoing person instead of his usual teenage introverted small talk. Problem was it was Sunday and I had to take him back to his mom's that evening. I was planning on getting bitched out about it, or she would find it hilarious. Honestly, it could have gone either way with her. I could never predict how she would take it. Luckily she was out when we got there and I told him to just go to his room and take a nap. He already fell asleep in the car on the way there. She was none the wiser. I think some time later he eventually told her about it and she did find it funny after all.
My dad taught me how to play throw rocks, where you toss a handful of rocks in the air directly above you and run away before they hit you. I was playing one with my cousin and got clunked on the head by a big one and bled all over my face and shirt collar. I went crying to Dad and he paid me $1 and a piece of gum to keep quiet about the throw rocks game and just tell Mom my cousin threw it at me. My relationship with my cousin has been irreversibly damaged since then because I lied on him and he never wanted to talk to me again, so we drifted apart.
When my wife's at work, I will take my daughter, 4-year-old, out for breakfast, then we will go on a small adventure around a shop of her choice and pretend whatever she wants. Last time we went to a car parts shop and rolled tires around as we were freeing the rollings from Monster. So far my wife doesn't believe her when she later on grasses me up. To be honest, it's the only thing pre-COVID I miss doing.
My dad used to hoist my siblings and I to the ceiling in a garbage can with a come along and swing us back and forth. Fun as hell, but don't tell your mother.
Daughter speaking for her father. In high school, everybody was always busy at work or clubs, so I was the first one in my household to get home nearly every single day. Dad was having money troubles that he didn't want to disclose to anyone, so he paid me $5 a month to take the bank statement letter from the mailbox and hide it from my stepmom until he got home. It was the closest thing I got to an allowance.
My dad cooked us all dinner as a surprise. He was a wizard in the kitchen and my mom had no idea since everyone shushed. So, she also cooked a 3-course meal in honor of my dad's and my huge appetite. All I can say is that I've never eaten more in my life, the embodiment of gluttony.
In my second year of college my best friend committed suicide. We were all pretty heartbroken, so my mom and dad drove up from the next province to be with me. My dad, being a great cook, decided he would cook my roommates, friends and I a nice dinner to bring everyone together during the bleak moment. My dad and I ended up getting completely shit-faced as one tends to do during heartbreaking times. He got embarrassed at his drunken state, and snuck out the back door and jumped in a cab without saying goodbye. I was upset he disappeared like that, but he also still had the car keys I needed so I could drive my friends and I to the funeral the next day. I called him and asked him to get out of the cab, and that I would meet him at whatever street corner he was at, which he did. When I found him, he was sitting in the stoop of an apartment building puking and crying. I rolled up and together we staggered home drunk and crying arm in arm. When we got back to my apartment, he was still embarrassed, so he asked to sleep in the car. I said okay, grabbed him a blanket, Pringles and a Gatorade for midnight munchies. I go back inside and no sooner did I sit down did I get a text from him saying he was cold and wanted to come in. I went and got him from the car and he was covered in Pringle crumbs. Like, covered. I dragged him up the sketchy spiral staircase to my apartment and the last thing he said before he went inside and to bed was, "God, your stairs are like fucking Hogwarts, man. Please don't tell your mother." And he passed out. It was the moment I saw my dad as a real person, not just my father. I think a lot of fathers try to be strong and stoic for their kids during hard times, in an attempt to be stable for us. Sharing this heartbreaking moment with him just brought us closer together. I love my dad. Man cooks a mean bavette steak.
Not a real "don't tell your mother about this" moment, but when I was little, my dad had a workshop in the garage where he'd do woodwork. I'd come out and talk to him while he worked, and he'd let me sit on the car that was parked in the garage. He framed it as something that was so bad and edgy and we couldn't tell my mom, and I was 5, so I believed it and felt so cool without actually doing anything wrong or dangerous.
I'm not a dad, but this is about my father. It was freshman year and I was 13. That day I ran a mile for ROTC warm-up, went to dance class, had wrestling practice after school which always includes weight lifting and running a mile for both warm-up and cool down, then worked 4 hours construction. Just got home, thought I was alone, went outside and sparked the joint I was looking forward to all day. My dad steps outside, sits right next to me, hands me a beer and asks about my day. He never said anything about the smoke. The end of that conversation ended with, "Don't tell your mother about this."
When my son was 6, I was playing Grand Theft Auto late at night. He wakes up and comes to the living room, tells me he can't sleep, and asks can he watch me play. I say he can, but not to tell his mom. He agrees with a big smile. Maybe after about an hour he is playing and I'm watching and helping him. He can't stop laughing, driving into people and running from the cops. I was telling him to watch out for the 5-0 and he asks me what that means, so I tell him it's the cops. He just shrugs and keeps playing. Now fast forward about a week later and we are all driving in the car. All I hear is a scream of "Dad, watch out, it's the 5-0. And I absolutely start crying from laughing so hard, all while his mother is questioning where he learned that. He just says, "YouTube." She found out later that I let him play GTA, but I hope the memory of that is as special to him as it is to me.
Thanks for watching Reddit with Husky. Hit the subscribe button for more video, and let me know in the comment whether you have experienced any "don't tell your mother about this" moment.